As we reflect on this day, we also shine a spotlight on the state of domestic work in South Africa. According to a recent quarterly labour force survey, there are over 500,000 domestic workers in the country. Mainroot Placements and Cleaning Academy says domestic workers often endure exploitation, discrimination and poor working conditions. Let's unpack this leg of the big story. Bring in our guest, Kopano Mbiba. She's the managing director at this academy and joins us now via our video link. Kopano, it's great to see you. Welcome to the SABC News channel. You know, sadly, we wait for days like this to shine a spotlight on domestic work, despite how integral this type of work is for everyday living. Nonetheless, as we mark this Workers' Day, I wonder what you reckon remains the main challenges for people in the sector.
You know, yesterday good morning to you, Ayanda. Great to be here, and good morning to your viewers as well. We were talking about this yesterday, and I said it all starts in the mind. I think we're still struggling to actually comprehend that a domestic worker is an employee, just you and I. You know, you can see it with the hesitant to engage in conversations like this. People don't want to have conversations like this. People are very defensive. People are very, apprehensive. They'd rather talk about something else, but not this. So, yeah, we are here to uphold the dignity of domestic workers in South Africa.
Yeah, and I suppose that mind shift is important, especially for people who have this kind of assistance in their homes, seeing it as, rather taking on the responsibility to regard these individuals as people who are workers just like them. And hopefully we live in a society where legislation assists in that. To what extent do you reckon our laws are keeping up?
No, they are absolutely keeping up. You know, that is not actually the problem. The problem comes when people are in our private space, in our homes, where they feel that they can then run this in isolation to what the law stipulates. You know, I don't think it has anything to do with what the law says, because the law does say that, the domestic workers, like each and every employees, should be able to enjoy the rights afforded to every other employee. So the problem is with us in our private spaces.
Yeah, and it is in that environment, I suppose, people feel that there shouldn't be an encroaching of how they run their affairs. You know, unlike any other work that takes place outside the house, domestic work is part of people's private space. And I suppose in some ways, that's how people get away with the exploitation and the discrimination that I spoke about earlier.
Absolutely. More especially with what we refer to as live-in domestic workers. We see a lot of exploitation. Well, it might be because of people are ignorant, or they just don't maybe want to come to a full comprehension that a domestic worker is actually an employee, just you and I, Ayanda.
Yeah. The question I then suppose becomes in what ways domestic workers can be empowered. You know, the discussions around their isolation, their exploitation, the poor working conditions are certainly not new. And, obvious questions will begin to come up about ways through which they can be empowered without putting them at risk of further exploitation, if you know what I mean.
And look, we have spoken about the Constitution. We have amended, the Constitution. But I feel in my heart that it's about time that we as employers really want to engage in such conversation and say, look, Kopano, we have things have been done wrong in a very long time. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to adjust because we've been taught in a certain way. We've done things in a wrong way for a very long time. Can we then start having conversations about these things? Listen, we don't want to We don't want to, at the end of the day, come into people's homes and start forcing them to do things, but we want to have genuine conversations about employers to say, how can we change things? Because things really need to change, Ayanda.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I wonder to what extent, Kopano, you reckon communities can play a part in many instances when there is someone mistreating their domestic worker. It's actually known by people who are close to them. And sure, you know, because they're close, they might be hesitant to speak out. But the kind of role that comes with certainly cannot be overstated.
I beg your pardon, Ayanda.
Yeah, I
lost you.
Right. Part of what I was getting down to, Kopano, is the responsibility for communities to assist domestic workers who they know aren't being treated as they should be.
Look, perhaps maybe workshops to bring awareness of what is available to them and for them, and not only workshops that can assist domestic workers, but also workshops that will be able to assist the employer to the domestic worker to say, listen, this is up to us. And I'll tell you why I say maybe perhaps we need to start with employers to domestic workers, because we have the upper hand. We are the initiators of the relationship. So we are the ones to say, listen, let's pave a way. Let's change the way that we have been doing things. Yes, we don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but at least can we recognize the fact that we are not doing things right. Today is Workers' Day. But I know it's the same for many domestic workers, you know, so things need to change. People need to get involved. People need to open their minds. People need to come together and say, let's sit down and actually have a conversation about this.
Yeah, speaking about conversations, we know how important language is. And certainly in my kind of space, there's been a slight evolution around how we refer to people who do this kind of work, right? We've come from the days where even on platforms like this, you know, you throw around words like maid and stuff. But there's certainly been a slight change in that. And I wonder if you reckon we finally have gotten to a point where the language we even use for people who are engaged in this kind of work is accommodating, is inclusive, and helps change those perceptions that you spoke about.
We're getting there, Ayanda, but we still have a long way to go. I think part of this workshop will be really to instill what you're saying. Let's change the way we address them. Let's change the way we speak to them. I mean, I often hear people say, Yazi Izolo, like last night I was shouting at my helper because she, and for her, it's like, it's normal, you know, so it's communication to them, the way that we speak to, the way that the way that our own children address our aunties, you know, it's very important. So that's one of the things that we need to start at.
Yeah, well, the president is going to be, the president is going to be delivering the keynote address at the main Workers' Day rally, which is going to take place in Cape Town today. I'm sure you'll be watching in closely to hear what he has to say generally about workers, but if he had your ear, or essentially if you were able to advise him, what would the main issues you reckon that he needs to focus on when it comes specifically to domestic workers?
Get in touch with me, President Ramaphosa. There is a lot that has to be unpacked. I think our domestic workers have been neglected for a long time. Most of the time it's because of ignorance. Most of the time it's because we have our own idea, you know, the old way of how we used to treat domestic workers. And now that we are in the new era, we just don't know how to treat them. It's all in the mind. We're still struggling of, coming into terms with the fact that a domestic worker is an employee, just like you and I. So we really need to be organizing workshops where we educate people about this sector, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Kopano Mbiba, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. We appreciate your time on the SABC. Kopano is the MD with Mainroot Placement and Cleaning Academy. Thank you once again.